We're going to be starting our pranayama and meditation workshop that will be over the next 45 minutes. So thank you very much. I obviously require no introduction, but for those of you who don't know me from before, I am Divya Prabha. I'm one of the founders of this festival. I'm one of the co-founders of Yoga Mission and International Chandramouli Charitable Trust. And we have been working, bringing yoga as a way of life for young children and women in Varanasi in particular over the last 15 years or so. We'll be shortly going into thank you, Vinda.
All right, so this is our segue into the next session. I'll be introducing Divya Mataji. I would just like to confirm if I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yeah, yes. You're very audible.
All right. Okay. Divya ma'am graduated from Oxford University from the UK with a master's with honours in metallurgy and science of materials, and started an illustrious career with top UK and American investment banks. Following life-changing experiences, she left this life behind, embarking on her spiritual journey with Brahmrishi Vishvatma Bawraji. She has dived deep into Indian culture at Varanasi and draws on the ancient wisdom of the Vedas, Upanishads, and the Gitas, bringing the light of knowledge into the deep practice of the 8 limbs of yoga in daily life. She is traditionally trained and guided in Maha, hatha, mantra, laya, and raja yoga. Ancient Sanskrit education in Varanasi for the last 14 years, winning the gold medal for the Shastri, which is the equivalent course, and coming top of her university class during further studies in Prachin Vyakaran on the Acharya course, which is the MA equivalent. She has broadcast lectures and taken part in discussions on the radio and continues to teach in India as well as internationally. She is co-founder of the Brahmrishi School of Yoga and Divine Light Retreats, a Vedic Gurukul and international NGOs promoting Sanatana Dharma, Bharatiya Sanskriti, and yoga as a way of life. Ma'am, I've learned so much from you in the last 2 days, and there's so much more to learn. So over to you. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om. Pranam, and welcome to this short session on pranayama and meditation. I thought that I would begin with just a little slideshow to give you some of the key features of pranayama, because whilst we all practice pranayama, there's no doubt about that. But there's sometimes in different traditions, different aspects of are picked up, and I want to bring it back to the Shastras and to bring it into the practice. So here we've got Pushpendra Brahmachari in the 3 bandhas, which I'll explain to you in a short while. So just going to the very beginning, when we talk about pranayama, we're talking about the control of the breath, and this is a core aspect of hatha yoga. Now, when we talk about ashtanga, hatha, and all of these different kinds of practices of yoga, it's really important to understand that it's not just a style of yoga that we're talking about. When we talk about ashtanga, we're talking about the 8 limbs: yama, niyam, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharan, dhyana, samadhi, combining the internal and the external limbs of the 8 limbs of yoga as defined by Patanjali. And when we talk about hatha, hatha is really talking about an internal effect. Hatha comes from the 2 words hum and tam, which were 2 Sanskrit bijas, and they're reflecting the right nostril, the hum, and the tongue on the left nostril. You could also say pran and apan. It also reflects the sun on the right, the moon on the left, hot on the right, cold on the left, Rajaguna on the right, and Tamaguna on the left. And through the practices of pranayama, we bring these two breaths. When I say breaths, I'm not just talking about physical breath. I'm also talking about the subtle, because prana, the five pranas, pran, apan, saman, vyan, and udan, are not just a physical effect, but also a subtle effect in the subtle body, such that you can still be alive with your subtle prana whilst you do not appear to be breathing. And these are higher yogic states. So when these two breaths, the left nostril and the right nostril, internally and externally become balanced, that is the union of them. So the pran comes into apan, or the apan comes into pran, as described in the Bhagavad Gita amongst many other shastras. This union, this yoga, is called hatha. And so through the practices of pranayama, we aim to bring these two breaths internally and externally into union, into balance, to attain that state of consciousness, hatha, which also automatically brings the pratyahara, with the withdrawal from the senses. So how do we do that? So Patanjali told us, tasmin sati shwasa praswasa yor gati vicheda pranayama. So pranayama, being the fourth limb of Ashtanga Yoga, is telling us after tasmin sati, after attaining stability in a posture, sthir sukham asanam. Sthir sukham asanam means not just only the physical stability, but also the mental stability. So after attaining that stability in an asana, the control of inhalation, swasa praswasa, exhalation, is known as pranayama. And we also know that it's removing the disturbances and the obstacles in the mind, bringing about that control. Prachadana vidarna bhyam va pranasya. So this is referring to the inhalation, the exhalation, control of that, the prachadana, vidarana, and bringing about the control of the modes of the chitta, which is our media of manifestation. So in breath, there are a couple of important things. You realize that unless you are a great, great yogi who knows how to have the heart stopped and the breath stopped and still be alive, unless we're in that state of higher state of consciousness, breath is the measure of our life. As soon as our life starts, we start breath. And as all of the different aspects of our senses and signs of life leave the body at the end, the very last to leave is the prana, our breath. So that pranayama is controlling our prana, and we combine that with Om, for example, as well, taking us from the external limbs of yoga, which is up to pratyahara, transmuting into the internal practices, the dharana, dhyana, samadhi. And it's pranayama is probably one of the least well understood and practiced parts of the 8 limbs of course, apart from the higher states of consciousness of samadhi. But it's something that is so powerful that it can actually change the way our mind works. Guruji, Brahmrishi Vishvatma Bawraji, always told us thought and breath are twins. In other words, if you can control your breath through pranayama, we can bring our thought, our vichara, under our control. And through psychology and rajaguna, if we can control our thought, that brings our breath under control. But of course, pranayama is a much more simple process than Raja Yoga and psychology. So looking on the physical, it's a very clear chain reaction. When stress comes in the system, worry, the head starts heating up, mental tension's there, and it starts to disturb our system. And that disturbs our breath straight away. And we're no longer fully expanding our lungs and emptying our lungs in the normal way. And so our oxygen levels drop. The lungs start to shrink. And further, the capacity to receive oxygen is further reduced. Carbon dioxide raises in the body, which creates exhaustion, tiredness, laziness, stiffness, all sorts of many diseases, and also thickening of the blood. This is on the physical. Of course, on the subtle, it's far more subtle, of course. And on the physical, if we look at the effect of pranayama, it starts redistributing that heat in the body, cooling the system down, allowing our blood to flow properly, also restoring the balance of the 5 pranas, the vyan in the whole body, udan going up, saman in between the pran and the apan. And with the balancing and the correct flow of these pranas inside, it starts to allow our physical brain to receive blood in the right amounts with the proper pressure, getting brain cells and our nervous system working better, more efficiently, stronger, and balanced. And this brings our thoughts under control through the subtle control of the prana. So this is how the pran and the apan is working. So there are many different practices, and I just mentioned a couple in brief. Anoma Viloma, which you can practice all year round, which we're going to get a chance to do in just a few minutes' time. Kapalbhati. Now, Kapalbhati, I think of all of the pranayamas, is the least well understood. When you have a practice of Sanskrit, as many of you do, and also the sadhana, Kapalbhati becomes a very clear pranayama. Kapal is referring to the mata, the kapal, the skull area of your head, and bhati means to shine. So if you translate it to English, which probably sounds much better in Sanskrit than it does in English, shining skull, you can understand that it's really having a big effect on the very topmost part of our physical body, but also in terms of our subtle. Kapalbhati is neither heating nor cooling, and so can be practiced all year round unless there's unless you're not ready for it. And the key to being ready to practice Kapalbhati is the elasticity of our stomach muscles, and we can test that by the sound that we get in Nadi Shodhana. For example, if I do like this now, I haven't done pranayama for the last few hours, so let's see how clear my nostrils are, and it's a good example for you. So looking at Nadi Shodhana, so you can see I haven't done pranayama for many hours now, but still there's a very strong sound coming out in the Nadi Shodhana. And that's a reflection of the elasticity of my stomach muscles, allowing a very fast pump out, forcing the pran out through the nostrils with this sound. So let me just do that sound again. Now, if we are able to produce this kind of sound in Nadi Shodhana, then we are ready for Kapalbhati. The reason is that it's essential to be having this clearness in the nasal passages so that the prana can be forced through the forehead. And when I say forced, I don't mean like beating it out. I mean that there is a pressure as the pran moves through the system and popping up into the head. And so with that sound of Nadi Shodhana, then Kapalbhati can be like this. And you can hopefully see that there's the energy is moving through the top of the forehead, as opposed to Bastrika, which has a very different sound in our tradition, like this. So that is the sound of Bastrika in the way that we've been taught by Guruji. And there's so many different traditions. And it's really important to remember the key point is to attain that higher state of consciousness, that state of samadhi, samabuddhi, stable intellect, sthir buddhi, sthit pragya, through the practices of yama, niyam, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So whatever your practices are in your particular tradition, they're all taking us to one place. And that's the important thing, rather than whose practice is better or any of these kind of things. We all reach the kind of teacher that is right for us and according to our previous birth sanskaras. So this is the way that we differentiate Kapalbhati and Bhastrika. And Bhastrika, with this sound, is actually a heating and purifying pranayama. Shitali typically is practiced in the hot season, and Shitali is a cooling breath pranayama done either by curling the tongue, if you can, and if you don't have the flexibility of the tongue yet, then you can just bring your tongue to your teeth and suck in the air through your teeth with the tongue touching the teeth, and you'll be aware that there's a cool breath coming in through your throat and down into your system. There's research going on right now that actually suggests that whilst we experience this cooling, our body temperature doesn't change. So just going to back to Bhastrika. Bhastrika is so incredibly powerful in terms of generating heat and purifying the system. Of course, purification happens in all of the pranayamas, and we've only just mentioned 4 here. But there's a great story of Swami Yogananda, who is after Brahmrishi Vishvatma Bawraji and all the brahmacharis, for example, and many people in this program are his disciples, his shishya. When he went to Amarnath unexpectedly with some other saints, he was dressed just in a loincloth and another piece of cotton cloth that he draped over his shoulders at that time. No sweater, nothing. And he went in the off season, so there was thick ice and snow. When he reached up to the top for Amarnath Darshan and realized how cold it was, he was offered many other tools to heat him, not heating machines, but some things that some sadhus are doing in these cold places. But he said, no, he doesn't do these things. He doesn't partake in these other kind of herbal and chemical practices. And he said that he would take care of it himself. And he sat down, he did Bhastrika Pranayama for a continued period of time and started running around barefoot in the snow. So these are real life stories about the effect that these pranayama can have on our body. And in pranayama, ultimately, we want to increase the distance between subsequent breaths because thought and breath are twins. So if the distance between each breath gets longer and longer, it means that the frequency of thought gets less and less until it actually stops. And there's a level of consciousness that thought actually stops in meditation. And you're aware of that. You're not aware of breath at that time. And breath actually is stopped at the time. And it's also my own experience that in pranayama and going into meditation, you're only aware that breath has stopped when breath is about to restart, because that's where I experience the thought, oh, I'm not breathing. Oh, should I be breathing in or out? Oh, I don't remember when I last breathed. And then slowly a deep breath comes in, restoring breath to the system. So these are not just like stories of like yogis in the caves. These are real life experiences that can be in your life too. You may ask what the benefit is that? Well, deeper meditation, realizing the light of knowledge, gaining peace and steadiness, stability in life. Now, in the practice of these pranayamas, we also have the 3 bandhas, which we'll go into detail in just a moment: Mul bandha, Udyan bandha, and Jalanda bandha, as well as mudras such as Gyan mudra, and also Ketsari mudra, with the tongue towards the back of the throat going up the nasal passages, and also the Rechaka, Paraka, and Kumbhaka. All of these things combined give us the practice of pranayama. Let's just have a look at the bandhas. Mul bandha, where you contract the pelvic floor. As you can see, this arrow is taking the gate up. Ashta chakra naudwara devanam pura yodhya. So this is the lower gate. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, mouth, and 2 lower gates. The asana in front closes the front gate, and Mul bandha, contracting up, removes the energy flow going out of that gate. Udyan bandha, as you can see here, when the lungs are completely emptied, it's like a vacuum is inside, and this vacuum pulls pulls the muscles and the tissue in. Actually, there are no organs in between there, so it really does go as close as it can to the back of the spine. And samana vayu is no longer between the prana and the apan, so the prana and the apan can join. This also creates that purifying energy, dissolving the impurities and the obstacles in our system. And at the same time as that, Jalanda bandha is manifesting, because with the contraction of the lungs, the emptying of the lungs, there's like this vacuum. So it's pulling in the stomach muscles, and it's also pulling in the throat tissue at the clavicle. So as you can see here in Sheni's throat, you see this little dip, and the dip on either side of the clavicle, combined with the stomach muscles going in under the rib cage. And it's just being done by this emptying of the lungs. It may not happen on the first day or even in the first month or so, but it will certainly happen at the right time. And if you aren't initially getting that Jalanda bandha, you can bring your chin down to the lock in this way. So that's the 3 bandhas combined with pratyahara, which happens automatically. This is part of the hatha yoga. We get the disconnection of the chitta from the objects of the senses. And so that enables you to turn inside, getting us to the internal limbs of yoga, dharana, dhyanam, and samadhi, which happens simultaneously. By definition, deshabandha chittasya dharana. So fixing your chitta on a point. And we'll talk much more about chitta tomorrow in the keynote speech at 2:30. Tatra pratyekatanata dhyanam. Constant flow of awareness into that object. So again and again, focusing on that object. And then tadeva atamatra nibhasam swarupa shunyam eva samadhi. So when we become absorbed in that, dissolved in that, we automatically give up our name and our form. And we're simply in that awareness of consciousness, that samadhi, samabuddhi, stable intellect, sthit pragya, absorbed in ourself. There are many different levels of samadhi, which we'll talk about in other sessions, but we'll just go into the different stages of meditation. Initially, perhaps you're able to just concentrate on the form of the letters in the mantra. You can imagine that you're writing the mantra between the eyebrows at the Agya chakra. When that becomes an easy process, the meaning of the mantra may start to come into your awareness, or you may know what it is, and you can start joining these things together. And finally, you may become aware of the sound of your mantra, not you repeating, but the sound of it itself, combined with the letters and the meaning. And this is a step-by-step process that happens in itself as we get closer to our real selves. And the easy mantra is Om. And what is mantra? Manana trayatiti mantra, that things that protects you from the cogitations of the mind, is called mantra. And very well-known mantra is the Omkara. The is at the throat, because Om consists of 3 letters, A, U, and Ma. It's a bija as described in many Upanishads and Vedas. And U at the throat, U at the lips, and Ma is actually at the top of the nasal passages. And this is actually described as a naturally uplifting sound. Udgita Shabda is said in the Samaveda, which means that Shabda that takes you from lower to higher. Now, I've just shown you in the physical that through U, and that it's naturally uplifting in the physical. But in the subtle, it's also, you can imagine that the from the Muladhara chakra to the Anahat in the middle of the chest, the U from the Anahat to the Lalana to the Agya chakra, and finally the from the Agya chakra to the Brahma chakra, the final stage of our journey in the Ashta chakra, Naudwara Devanam Pura Yodhya. So why don't I invite you to put your screens on and join me for a little bit of practice, so that we can practice for the next 17 minutes. We'll be finishing on time, so that Shirley Tellis, the head of research at Patanjali Research Institution, will be joining us. So if you'd like to join me with Anoma Viloma, take your hand into Gyan Mudra. Gyan Mudra is with your thumb on top of your forefinger. There's a reason for this. The thumb represents your buddhi, your intellect, and your forefinger is all of those negative things in our life. The ahankara, the ego. If you think about it, if you have children, or you might have occasionally pointed your finger telling them not to do whatever it is they're doing, or perhaps in a dispute with someone, your finger may become raised. So this is the ego. We want to bring our ego under control, and we do that with the Gyan Mudra. So see that the thumb is firmly placed on top of the forefinger, and you bring that onto your knees. The right hand with the two fingers in Apan Mudra. So you have your thumb joining the 2 middle fingers, and we bring that onto our nose. Now we inhale like this. So inhaling through the left and exhaling through the right, holding out the breath as long as it's comfortable. And then inhaling through the right, exhaling out of the left, holding out the breath, having the 3 bandhas again. Then when we need to breathe. Now, we're not making you breathe to counts, because everybody's breath length is different because of the different level of pace of thoughts in your life. So hold out the breath as long as is comfortable. Take your breath gently, exhale gently, and holding out. But what is important is to have the 3 bandhas, have your mantra between your eyebrows, and we can start. I will say in and out for a few breaths, but please don't feel forced to go at the pace that I'm giving, which is a general pace, but to go for your own pace, because the slower you take breath, the more peaceful your mind will become. So inhaling on the left and exhaling out on the right. Closing both nostrils, maintaining both mudras, having the 3 bandhas and your mantra at the eyebrows. And when necessary, you can inhale through the right, exhale through the left, holding out the breath, both nostrils closed. Inhale and exhale. You can bring your tongue into Kesari Mudra. And exhale. Holding out the breath. It's important to hold out the breath because if there are any disturbances in your system, for instance, blood pressure or heart problems, holding in the breath will increase these problems. So in general groups, we always teach with holding out the breath to ensure everybody's safety. Inhaling. And exhaling. Inhaling. And exhaling. Inhaling. And exhaling. Inhaling. And exhaling. And exhaling. Keep to your own rhythm. And if you'd like to bring both hands into Gyan Mudra on your knees, breathing gently, we'll chant Om 3 times. The first from the Muladhara to the Anahat in the middle of the chest. The second we'll visualize raising from the Anahat to the Agya chakra between the eyebrows. And the third we'll visualize going from the eyebrows to the Brahma chakra. So Agya to the Brahma chakra. After that, you can bring your tongue to the roof of your mouth or into Kejari Mudra. Be aware of keeping your gates closed and visualize your energy raising up. And you can visualize writing your mantra between the eyebrows. I'll say this again after chanting Om. So join me now with your mics off in chanting Om. Om. Bring your tongue to the roof of the mouth, allowing us to withdraw from the senses. And if it can curl towards the back of the throat or even up the nasal passages, bring it into Kejari Mudra. And visualize that you're writing your mantra between the eyebrows. Concentrating on each letter this way enables us to become easily absorbed into the mantra, minimizing the distractions of the mind, enabling us to become one-pointed easily and becoming absorbed in our object of concentration. Oh. Om Purnamitaha Purnamitam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Pranam. I hope that you enjoyed that short meditation. Will